Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of In the Prog Seat. It's Tuesday night. We've got the A-Team, George Lamie, Chuck Alvarez, and Anthony Ferraro. What's happening, fellas?
Greetings and good evening.
Greetings.
So today is all about our favorite debut albums from progressive rock luminaries, right? So our favorite debuts from some of our favorite prog rock, prog metal bands. Top 10, our favorite 10, okay? Interesting thing, which I figured out while I was starting to put together my list, is like a lot of the really, really major bands didn't have great debuts. Isn't that kind of interesting, right? Adds a little wrinkle to this, except for a couple of them. Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Which I'm sure we'll get to. But some of the really, really big bands had debuts that were okay, but nothing spectacular. I think there was a lot of kind of like bands that kind of fell into the second or third tier that had some damn good debuts. So hopefully people watching tonight will, get a little tasty tidbits of some cool debuts that maybe they haven't checked out before. And we're going to start, let's see, we're going to go Anthony, Chuck, George, and myself and work our way around our top 10. So Anthony is going to kick us off with his number 10.
Okay, so I'm going to start off with my number 10. I'm going to get this out of the way. Surprise, surprise, Eddie Jobson, Zink's debut. I know he only has 2 records, but this is a debut from 1983. Gary Green from Gentle Giant plays on a couple tracks.
Yep.
It's amazing because before this debut, you never heard Eddie Jobson really sing live or sing on a studio album. It was always kind of backup, but I'll tell you, for me, I think he's got a really good voice. Shock, I know. But it's a great debut. I have it on LP. I have it on CD. I have it on remastered CD. It's a great early 80s synth record. I think he's a fantastic synth player. His tone, just everything he writes and produces is magic to me. So I'm going with Eddie Jobson, Zink from 1983.
Cool. Chris Allo, if you're watching, see, you're not the only one, right? 3 copies? Or you got 4?
3 copies, yes.
Okay, for now, right?
It's impossible to find on cassette.
Okay.
Oh man,
there'll be like a Hungarian reissue coming out in 6 months, and that'll be on order.
And my buddies will get it for me.
There you go. All right, Chuck, you're number 10.
all right. Mine is from 1975, a German band called New.
Ooh.
Their debut album, New. What's that? Oh no, forgive me. No. What's that? One of those great krautrock bands. They're actually a splinter band from Kraftwerk. The 2 members that were originally in Kraftwerk actually left to form that band right there. And it once again shows the fine line between punk rock and progressive rock. These guys were doing what Joy Division and Public Image Limited wound up doing back in the late 70s, the early 80s, but they were doing that in the early 70s right there. So once again, my debut album, my first is the debut album from the German band, No.
Say no to no. Say yes to no. Say yes to no, actually.
Yes to no.
All right, George, what do you got?
My number 10 is from the San Diego area, one of the early progenitors of the progressive metal scene, Psychotic Waltz.
Ooh.
That's a cool cover.
Yeah, all the Psychotic Waltz covers are cool. Yeah.
Really cool band. Not typical prog metal, not very keyboardy, but more of a 2-guitar attack. Singer plays flute, so you get a little of that tall feel. There's psychedelic edge to it a little bit, but it's a long album. Usually gets over 70 minutes. It gets boring, but this one doesn't. This is really good. The first of 5 albums that they
what was the title on that one again?
A Social Grace.
Social Grace, that's right. Yeah, really cool band. They're very different sounding. They got like this kind of like atmospheric psychedelic edge to their music a little bit, right?
Yeah. A little Sabbath, a little Tall, a little Dream Theater.
Yeah.
Kind of in there.
Yeah. Good choice. I forgot all about that one. Good choice. All right, 1977. This band was actually signed to Arista Records. Released the one album, One and Done. They had a unreleased album which came out years later, but this is basically it from them. England, Garden Shed.
Oh,
Terrific British
that's a very good
band.
album.
Yeah, I mean, if you love symphonic 70s prog, a la Genesis, yes, maybe a little King Crimson, great vocals, tons of mellotron and Hammond organ and synths, and just really intricate, complex passages, but nice vocal harmonies and whatnot. All pretty lengthy songs. Fantastic little oddity from the 70s. Like I said, a great one and done band, but good enough to get signed to a major label, but that was kind of the end of their story. So Garden Shed by England. If you haven't checked it out, if you can find it, I don't even know if this is still available, who knows, but absolutely worth getting. I bought this like in the early 90s when it was like bowled over by how good it is, and every time I listen to it, it's still as fresh sounding as the first time I heard it.
We have on Facebook, we have a Facebook group called the Prog Collectors Group, and that's very highly regarded in our group, that album.
Yeah, it's a really good one. It's a really good one. One of those bands that, like, if they had continued, I don't see any reason why they couldn't have been considered, one of the, other, made a real name for themselves, in other words, but wasn't to be, unfortunately. Back to Anthony.
Very well done. I like that. Mm-hmm.
My number 9 is coming from a musician from the Fab Five of the prog era. I'm talking about Genesis, and I'm talking about Tony Banks's debut, A Curious Feeling, with Kim Beacon on vocals and Chester Thompson on drums. He has, I think, 5 or 6 solo albums, and I think most people will tell you this is by far the best. Great singing by Kim Bacon. Fantastic synth playing by Tony Banks. Chester Thompson's not really noticeable. I mean, the drums do what they're supposed to do and just kind of keep the background beat, but there's nothing intricate or it's not your typical Chester Thompson record, but it's cool that he was a part of it. But this is a great one for any Genesis fans who are looking for a Tony Banks solo record to get. This would be the one, in my opinion, to get. A Curious Feeling from 1979.
Someone Else's Dream. Love that album.
Yep. Cool. All right, Chuck.
All right. Well, mine, what's his from 1968, from a band, that would change their sound radically during the 70s, but during the 60s, in 1968, their debut album.
Oh yeah.
The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, Pink Floyd. Oh man, just now this I've always held this as probably next to Animals, my favorite album by Pink Floyd. Always like the whimsical psychedelic feel of it. And I could understand why people fell in love with Syd Barrett, man. This right here was just prime Syd Barrett craziness right here, looniness. This album, that's my number 9 right here.
Sounds nothing like all their other albums, right?
Nothing.
Not even close.
No.
But it's too bad that they on the anniversary issue that they didn't reissue or actually put on See Emily Play and Arnold Lane. I mean, those 2 songs are fantastic. Yep. Like the synth or the psych pop that Sid was into at the time.
Oh yeah. Yep. Good choice. George.
All right. My number 9 is the oldest entry on my list from 71. Multinational band led by a Brit.
Ooh.
Obviously a total classic. Basically established the parameters of the genre. I mean, there was a little fusion before, but they really crystallized what scores of bands copied, really. And yet nobody really got the vibe of them still to this day. I mean, totally unique vibe, mixing Indian, jazz, rock. I mean, a must-have on this list, I'd say.
Yeah, one of those fusion bands that you can call them a fusion band, you can call them a jazz rock band, you can call them a prog rock band, because they kind of this really, Mahavishnu is like so different than any other band that came out at that time. groundbreaking stuff.
They were harsh, man. Mhm.
And they opened for a lot of commercial acts. It's so weird the way they
Purple.
Yeah.
They opened for Deep Purple.
Yep.
Mhm.
Great choice. All right. 1978. I believe this band was from Connecticut, if I'm not mistaken, from the East Coast here in the US. Another one of those one and done bands, although they kind of resurfaced many, many years later. Cathedral, Stained Glass Stories. Not
Love
to be
that album.
confused with the British Doom band Cathedral, who were awesome as well, but not prog, right?
Yep, exactly. Mhm.
Yeah. I absolutely adore this album. I mean, it's like if you love
Same here.
Mellotron and Moog and Taurus bass pedals and those loopy Steve Howe type guitar licks, man, this is just so good. So good. Lengthy tracks, dripping in atmosphere. It's kind of, again, early Genesis, certainly Trespass, Nursery Crime era Genesis, Close to the Edge era, yes, little bits of early King Crimson, a lot of Moody Blues influences here. The high-pitched vocals, kind of like John Anderson. Maybe a little bit of Starcastle, but not quite as upbeat.
Just like
That just reminds me I didn't include Starcastle on my list. But anyway, Starcastle debut, very, very good also. But yeah, this is another classic, released, I think, privately at the time. And then Greg Walker picked it up for his symphonic label back in the early 90s. But this album was recorded and originally released in 78. So great album of like kind of underground, unknown progressive rock from the US in the 70s. One of the true great early US prog bands.
mm-hmm. Oh, a lot of excellent picks going on here.
Yeah, we got some good stuff, right? Mr. Anthony.
All right, we're on number 8.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, my number 8 takes me back to 1973 with one of maybe the most underrated guitar players in the prog genre. I'm going to go with Camel, self-titled from 1973. Slow Yourself Down features a fantastic keyboard, a synth solo by Pete Pardo. Mystic Queen, Never Let Go. It's kind of staples that were in their live shows later on. But Camel's 1973 self-titled, just kind of a little precursor to what was going to become from this band. Great band. And Andy Latimer, as I said before, always, in my opinion, has always scratched that David Gilmour itch, that tone, just the atmosphere. It's so atmospheric. So Camel, 1973, self-titled.
Never Let Go. What a great song.
Oh man, love it, man. Such a great album.
And I think that debut doesn't get enough credit for how great it is because of the like 3 or 4 albums that came after it, which is so cool. But man, that debut is red hot too.
It really is, man.
Yeah. That's a great choice. Yeah, I had them on my original 25. I had this enormous list, and I'm like, how do I pare this down? But they were on it because that's such a great album. I'm glad someone picked it. All right, Chuck.
All right. Okay. Mine is from the Land Down Under. Actually, no, forgive me. No, not from the Land Down Under. It's a New Zealand band whose debut is nothing like anything that came afterwards. It's the group Split Ends with Mental Notes.
Oh.
Mental Notes. It's a combination of like a freakish new if you ever heard anything from Split Ends, that early period, it's like Peter Gabriel singing with Roxy Music, if they can call it that. That's this is probably their most progressive sounding album. Under the Wheel, a lot of freaky Stranger Than Fiction. Always found this to be like a real creepy album, nearly gothic at times. Mm-hmm. Split Ends from 1975.
Wow, I had no idea they were even putting out albums in 75.
Totally different. Sound nothing like what you hear.
I'm gonna have to investigate that.
Mm-hmm.
I heard
Great
you say
album.
Split Ends. I'm like, get the fuck out of here, right? I will have to investigate that. Because I
Chuck was telling me about that album 10 or 11 years ago. Chuck, you and I were talking about that album.
Mm-hmm. I don't think you liked it.
No, I did. I did.
Okay.
It wasn't what you had said it would be. I liked it, but it was very it was something I definitely needed to check out because it did have a little bit Genesis vibe to it. It's definitely not what went on after later in the discography.
Oh no,
not even close.
Totally different. Totally different.
I am intrigued. Very cool.
But you know, the Finns are talented. I mean, Frick was a big fan of them.
Although at the time, Phil Judd, who was the leader at the time, and so had wrote the majority of the songs here and on the second album. So that's why, you know, it always sounded very creepily different. And I know that he was a big Roger Chapman fan from Family.
Very cool.
All right, George, you're going to see UK. Is that what we're going to see here?
Uh-oh.
Come on, George.
This band's from Sweden, 2001, when everybody probably figured, rightfully so, that the Dream Theater formula had kind of worn itself out, comes Andromeda. It plays in those parameters, but it sounds totally fresh. As good as the Dream Theater stuff that was coming out at that time, at least. Just got an energy to it, like all the songs that you just feel them. They didn't have a singer at the time, so they employed a death metal singer that they knew or hired. I'm not sure what it is, but he doesn't do death growls on here. He's got some kind of an odd, flat kind of a tone, but it totally works with this music. He's not on any of the rest of the albums, but and then they re-recorded it with their eventual singer. So you could have either one, but they both work really good.
Good heavy album and some really tight passages and playing on that album.
Yeah, the guitar player and the drummer are just locked in.
And the guy that they got to be their regular singer afterwards is pretty damn good.
I like that guy.
All right.
Yeah. Good stuff. All right, where am I here? All right, 1983. Perhaps along with another album, which I will talk about in a few minutes, probably the beginnings of what we came to know as the British neo-prog movement, right? IQ, Tales from a Lush Attic.
Beautiful.
Fantastic album. Yeah, I mean, this is so good. I mean, if you love Gabriel era Genesis, that's what you get here, right?
Yep.
I mean, you got Peter Nichols, who's got that Gabriel inflection. You got the really kind of spooky atmospheric keyboard tones and the really tasty melodic guitar from Mike Holmes, and just man, you know, Hammond organ and Moog and Mellotron, and just haunting, really gorgeous stuff. Big soundscapes, long tracks. It's so British sounding too. The first of, I think, in this entire career of this band, I think they only have one fairly weak album, maybe two. The Peter Manel years are like but all the other albums, man, are so good. And this is one of those bands that have been around forever, and they continue to release killer albums. This is the beginning, but they have so many other great albums. So Tales from the Lush Attic by IQ.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right, my number 7 comes from the Fusion era period from 1976. Got to go with it. Brand X, Unorthodox Behavior. I mean, with staples like Nuclear Burn and Born Ugly. Just probably, most people will agree, I think, with me, that this is maybe the finest hour in their discography. Good Soul's on Fire, Percy Jones, Phil. If you ever doubted Phil Collins as a drummer, you have to listen to this because he is absolutely on fire. So I'm going with Brand X, their debut, 1976, Unorthodox Behavior.
Great choice.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, Phil was a master drummer. Without a doubt.
That poor guy, man. He has no back now.
Yeah.
Oh, what a shame.
Yeah.
Well, mine is my number 7 is from a US band, 1975. Opened up for Queen, Styx, and quite a few other bands in the United States. I'm going with Crack the Sky's debut album, the eponymous named album, Crack the Sky. Hold On and Surf City. She's a Dancer, Sea Epic. Just absolutely, this album, it's they're a combination of what I would say like a Yes mixed with 10cc. Probably more so on the 10cc side than Yes, but great band. Great debut too.
They only have their live album that they released, I think, at the end of the decade there. It's fantastic.
Oh, they're awesome
They
band.
got like 1 million albums, right? It's like
they're a great band. Yeah, I have most of their catalog, so I really love them.
cool. Yeah, that's another one of those bands that I think I have heard people remark on in the comments section over the years. Like, Pete, when are you gonna cover "Crack the Sky"? Crack the Sky, Crack the Sky. I'm like,
Oh well, Alex Cruzetta and I saw them in 2019, and they were on point, man. They were excellent. Wish to see them again soon, hopefully.
long-standing band.
Yep.
All right, George, what do you got up your sleeve?
Well, this is probably the weirdest origin for anybody on my list. The first time I saw this guy, he was the keyboard player / musical director for Jada Pinkett Smith's band.
Oh,
Then he ended up in Stanley Clark's band.
okay.
Been for like 6 years now. Talking about Cameron Graves, Planetary Prince. This is just, it bowled me over. This is 2017, just completely bowled me over when it came out. The entire album is just so high quality across the board, every facet of it. He's a great player, but that's kind of beside the point. Is the composing is top notch, and a stock lineup, including Kamasai Washington, has got kind of a big rep for his records. I don't think they're as focused as this, so I really like this. High recommendation.
I've never heard that. That sounds intriguing. By the way, everybody, we will put our list in the comments below, just so you know, because I know everybody will be asking. So make sure to look at it.
Yeah, it's hard. What album was that George said?
I couldn't make it out. The CD was too small, right?
They don't hold it up too long, like
I know these guys have LPs. Damn it. But don't worry, everybody. We will put the names of all the albums. So fret not. Look in the comments below. It'll be pinned at the top. So, how about another Arista debut, 1977? Another U.S. band from the Virginia, D.C. area. Terrific band that I think had all the tools to be huge, and once again, never really happened. Arista Records, I guess, just did not know what the hell to do with prog bands back in the 70s, right? Happy the Man, self-titled.
Ooh.
Killer album, mostly instrumental. I think, these guys, I think, had the ability. They could have been a fusion band, because I think a good chunk of their music is very fusion, like Return to Ferraro oriented. But they did have some vocals on some of their stuff really well. It's like the vocal oriented stuff is kind of like early Phil Collins era Genesis-y type of symphonic prog meets like the RTF type of thing, like I mentioned. But man, some great songs on here. Stumpy Meets the Firecracker and Stencil Forest. What a great song title. Starborn, Carousel is great. Mr. Mirror's Reflection and Dreams. Great guitars. Kit Watkins on keyboards. Stanley Whitaker, hell of a nice guy. I've met him and interviewed him at Nearfest. Great guitar player, vocalist. Just such a great band. Really cool album. They have a couple of albums in their discography. Check them out if you haven't. Happy the Man, self-titled.
Excellent. Like a mix of Camel and Genesis and Gentle Giant all at the same time.
Yeah, and some fusion. Yeah, so Camels, it's a good comparison. Yep. A lot of nice keyboards. Music is not overly rocking, but it's very intricate, jazzy, proggy, atmospheric. Yeah, great stuff.
What do you think of the newer stuff with, what is it, Sweet Oblivion? It was kind of like what it kind of morphed into. Wasn't there like a guy from Happy the Man, and I call her Sweet Oblivion now, I think that's Stanley's band, right? Or it's, I mean, I've heard various different incarnations of various members. It's all good. Yeah, a lot of good stuff from the Happy the Man camp. All right, my number 6 comes from 2007, 2008-ish. Steven Wilson's debut, Insurrentes. It was recorded while Porcupine Tree was between tours and between working on the Incident record. You have Gavin Harrison on the kit. You have Tony Levin making a guest appearance. Harmony Corrine is a staple in Steven Wilson's set list. 2 other favorites on there, Angry Child and Significant Other. Fantastic tunes. It sounds like the next Steven Wilson tour. He might be playing a couple other tunes from this. Would be Significant Other would be one of them, which I think is fantastic. So that set list could be pretty awesome. So I'm going. And one thing about this record, it's very dark, as you can tell by the cover. You know, maybe this is like a little precursor to what was going to happen 13 years later with COVID. But I'm going with Steven Wilson, Insurrentes, 2000. I think it was released in 2007, November 2007 in the UK, and then like early 2008 in the US.
Nice pick. I love that album. Actually, I'm very partial towards Steve Wilson's his solo career. I know a lot of people don't like the pop oriented stuff that he's been doing, but I like Steven Wilson stuff, what's his solo stuff, and that's a good album right there. Love it. Nice pick, man.
Thanks, brother.
Well, I slightly hinted towards this album. My number 6, if I'm not mistaken, is the debut album from one of those Canterbury bands, Soft Machine. The Soft Machine. This is when Robert Wyatt was still in the band, Michael Ratledge and Kevin Ayers on bass. Very zany stuff, man. Nothing like the jazz-oriented stuff of before. This right here, this album, is just plain old cosmic Canterbury. Like you could see where Gong got a lot of their stuff from. Very cosmic stuff and very zany too. Robert Wyatt.
Chuck, you can say it. It's a weird ass album.
It really is, man. Well, Robert Wyatt, his drumming, man, you know, before he had his accident, man, you know, this was another guy that could drum his behind off, man. Soft Machine's debut album, Soft Machine. Great album, man.
And that is
Chuck, did he have his ass? Was he still in Soft Machine when he had his accident?
No,
or was this
he was
after he
with
left?
No, he was in Matching Mole at the time. Mhm.
Oh, okay.
And that is the album that they opened up with for Jimi Hendrix.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Debut song.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep.
Yep. Cool. George, you're up.
The first of a couple of pretty obscure ones. This is Japanese power trio, Tri-Offensive.
Tri-Offensive. Wow.
Like a play on trio, you know. Yeah, 2009. It's like a cross between like a Guitar Hero album and Fusion. The guitar player, he's only 20 years old. He's the star here. He wrote everything. He's kind of a cross between Greg Howe and Brett Garsed. Real smooth legato player. The songs got some crunch to them. They're not no softy stuff here. There's everything's pretty upbeat, and I think rockers would definitely appreciate this album. But it's also got enough of a textured edge for the Fusion people too. So, and unfortunately, a one and done so far.
What year did that come out, George?
2009.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I have the idea for a t-shirt. Sea of Tranquility, no softy stuff here. No softy stuff here. Wow. I love that. I love that. I'm gonna use that. And there's no softy stuff on this album either. All right. So this is what the hell year? 1995. All right, let's bring it a little bit further. I remember the first time I heard this album, I was just starting to, I probably had been listening to like this new wave of prog in the 90s for like a year, maybe a year and a half. And I remember a buddy of mine who had a CD mail order business at the time from out west. He's like, man, you've got to hear this debut from this California band called Spock's Beard. The album is called The Light. It is absolutely terrific. And I was like, all right, cool, I'll buy it. Never heard a lick from it, and got it in the mail, put it in, and I was like, wow. I mean, this is great. The title track is like 15 minutes. Go All the Way You Go is 12 minutes. Big, you know, a lot of
love that song.
And then The Water is like, 23 minutes long. And then On the Edge is like the rock track at the end, like 6 and change. Man, Gentle Giant, yes, Genesis all rolled into one, but it had an edge. Beatles Harmonies. The brilliance of Neil Morse was evident right from the outset. This is one of the best debuts of the last like 30 years. And it's still, I love the Spock's Beard catalog. and you know, they got more polished after this, I think. So this is still them in their infancy, but man, I can still listen to this and say, what a killer debut. Great musicianship, great vocals, got everything you want on it.
Yep. Love it.
All right, my number 5. We're on 5, right, Pete?
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. My number 5, as a long time ago when you were doing your Canterbury show, Ken had talked about a couple of bands who were from the Canterbury area, but kind of fit more into the jazz fusion area. So I'm going with National Health's debut from 1978. Featuring one of my favorite synth players, Dave Stewart, and Phil Miller on guitar, and Pip Pyle on drums, and Neil Murray on bass, with guest vocals from Amanda Parsons, who was on Bill Bruford's band debuted, I think, the year before. But it's got that jazz fusion-y type feel, but it also has that Canterbury type feel also. And Amanda Parsons' vocals are just, she is just heavenly. I mean, it fits perfectly. I usually don't prefer vocals in like a band that's more instrumental, but it works. It really does. And my favorite track is the opening track, Tenements Roads. Now this is an esoteric version, and on the esoteric version, they call it Thermos Roads. Of course, the people in the editing department totally missed that one, but that's been a long-standing joke. But National Health, 1978. With my favorite synth player, Dave Stewart is just fantastic. It's too bad that he's kind of distanced himself from all this period. It's just sad. But National Health, self-titled, 1978.
So a couple comments. That's a great album. That was also on my larger list, and if you remember, that was one of my picks on the Canterbury show. Did Esoteric release both of their albums?
Yes.
Both of them. Yeah, I probably need to get those because I have that.
Oh, I love. Of Cures,
a compilation that's got both albums and a couple other bonus things on it, which is cool. But I would love to have the reissue.
Yeah, they're of Cures and Cures is just that could be my all-time favorite Canterbury record.
Yeah, they're both absolutely amazing, great albums, and you know they're wacky albums, but so good. So
they're wacky, but they go somewhere. They're not like noodling where they just kind of go off and never come back. And they always have they always have that melody.
Yeah.
AKA Soft Machine.
Yeah, it was a Soft Machine. You never know you're either gonna get whimsical Canterbury, far out there free jazz, and then straight to jazz fusion.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. That's a good choice. All right, Chuck.
All right, my number 5 is from December of 1973, ECM. German bass player, probably doesn't get as much credit for being one of the fretless bass innovators. Eberhard Weber, his debut album, Colors of Chloe. What's an ECM with their records, man? Very melodic stuff, very melodic jazz. I would say that his stuff is a mixture of like a Camel or Eloy mixed with Weather Report, like early period Weather Report. Very dreamy stuff, and his bass playing is just astounding on here. Eberhard Weber, The Colors of Chloe.
Well, yeah, he's definitely a great player. Good choice.
Phenomenal bass player. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
You know, but he has suffered a stroke, so you know he doesn't play anymore. That's a bummer for him.
Yeah. Prolific guy too. I mean, he's played on so many albums over his career.
Kate Bush.
Yep. All right, George. George's got more obscure stuff coming.
Yeah, it's off the beaten path for sure. I think
that's good.
He's from Bolivia, 2012. Carlos Fisher. Autorretrato? I'm not sure how to say that.
Autorretrato.
Yeah,
Autorretrato.
Jazz rock guitar player.
Toritato?
I think a problem with a lot of producers is people want to just are so desperate to record, they don't have all their shit together as much as they could. The songs, the production, all the elements that go into taking a good album to great. But this guy, he must have really put the time in on this. This is so polished. He's a good guitar player, but that's kind of like secondary to these tunes. I mean, it sounds like he really worked everything out to a finite degree. And he's had a couple follow-ups since then that have both been different. Like The second one's all acoustic-y, and the third one is kind of prog rock. So he's a guy you can't pin down, but definitely worth getting this one.
George, what would you describe that album right there?
It's fusion with a slightly I don't want to say a commercial edge, but it's so polished that you think it's commercial. And of course it's got Latin because he's a Latin guy. There's definitely Latin flavor.
Excellent, George. Thanks, man.
All right, back to 83. I mentioned that other album, the kind of the neo prog from Britain, those two classic debuts, of course, Script for a Jester's Tear from Marillion. You know, those four albums with Fish are all four classics. You've got the you know, the two great concept albums that came out, the last two albums from that lineup. You've got the kind of dark Fugazi, and then the even darker debut. Just some great songs on here. The title track is awesome, epic. He Knows You Know, dark, catchy though.
Forgotten Sons.
Garden Party. Awesome sing-along song. Chelsea Monday is just gut-wrenching. And then, of course, Forgotten Sons, right? So just an amazing, amazing debut. And as great as it is, it like hinted at what was to come. And I think that, you know, all four of the albums with Fish are absolutely essential. And Clutching at Straws is usually my favorite, but I absolutely, you know, Misplaced Childhood, of course. But this is a classic debut. Just love it to death. And again, if you love that kind of very atmospheric, darkish, almost theatrical, early Gabriel era Genesis, that's kind of what Marillion bring to the table. So, you know, a lot of people are like, well, they weren't that, you know, them and IQ weren't that original, but what they did was they did it so great. And, you know, at the time, if you were really missing that style, they brought it back to the forefront. So,
excellent pick.
Thank you. All
right, number 4. George, you want to announce it, or should I just show it first?
Let's do it.
UK's, of course, self-titled debut featuring Bruford on drums, Jobson on synth, Wetton on bass vocals, and one of Pete's all-time favorite guitar players, Alan Holdsworth.
Right.
We couldn't do a top 10 debut without mentioning this one. I mean, this speaks for itself. In the Dead of the Night, Alaska, 30 Years, phenomenal. UK self-titled from 1978.
Only number 4?
What's that?
Only number 4?
You'll see why.
Okay.
I let you have that.
Danger Money I like better.
Wow, that's all right. There are a lot of people that do. I knew you were going to pick that one, so I had it in my original list. I'm like, I'll give it.
I didn't even bother.
Well, George kind of like set me up. I was like, well, I better do it if George is telling me I should.
It's a given. It's got to be on.
Or giving me a hint. I don't want to disappoint my Jobson fans.
That's right. Plus, he's probably watching. It's like, I got to get mentioned at least.
Oh man. All right, guys. My number 4, another art rock band, great influential art rock band from 1972. Actually, the anniversary of the album's release is coming up in a couple of weeks. Roxy Music's debut album. What's that? Very cosmic stuff over here. Anything with Brian Eno. Man, you could tell that when he was still with the band was still had that edginess to them. I know that Suzy Sue from Suzy and the Banshees loved this album. She said that this album right over here, because of Brian Eno, was one of her favorite things, and that's why she wanted to take that band and that edge over there with the band that she was with. Ladytron, Virginia Plain, The Sea Breeze, The Bitter Ends, some real great stuff on this album. My wife is looking at this album cover. She's like, "Oh, what kind of album is that?"
Like, well, if you like that one, I got a few more to show you, right?
Yeah. In fact, I think the first 5 or 6 all have chicks on them.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not even the racist one out of all of them, right?
No.
Yes.
Good choice. All right, George,
All right.
back to you.
All right. You know this one, Pete. 2000, released by Anthony's good friend Ken Golden.
Oh, what a great choice. Holy cow, I forgot all about that
I
one.
forgot about that one, man.
Oh, one of the best one and done albums, bands of all time.
Yep.
Absolutely. The
Yep.
pinnacle of super progressive stuff. I mean, this I got to see him at Prague Power too, and they bring it on live even. I mean, they were excellent. But this album is just you doubted that someone could put melodic vocals over something so frantic, but the guy's just a magician with the melodies. It's incredible what he can do.
Yeah.
You almost forget everything that's going on underneath it, which is pretty hard to believe if you focus on it. But not much to say. From Norway, 2000, Spiral Architect.
Love the album. Anthony, ever heard that album before?
I have not.
Oh, you need to. Yeah.
You need to.
Oh, yeah.
But so that's a great album.
Yeah.
Well, I like my head. Some others may not. I don't know.
If we blow up his head, who's going to talk about Eddie?
I know, exactly.
I remember when that Spiral Architect album first came out, we were all saying that this band is going to be huge. And then, like, you never heard another peep out of them. It's just like,
but I don't know why. That's the thing. You know? Even in this internet age, I don't know why there was never a follow-up to that.
I don't think there was personal beef because a lot of them still play together in other lineups, you know?
yeah,
I don't get it.
an absolute classic. And one of those albums too that's kind of hard to like kind of categorize, right? Because it's like it's progressive metal, but it's atmospheric. It's really complex. It's totally proggy. It's got all these elements that just really work. And how about the drumming on that album?
Oh, just fantastic.
The bass.
Yeah.
The bass, what's they're like a mix between like a Slayer and Porcupine Tree. That's the way I look at them. You know, what's a kind of like that,
like with a little bit of latter period death as well. I think you know.
I was going to say Watchtower meets Psychotic Waltz.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. It's a great. I completely forgot about that one.
I better say
That's one of the best, like one album wonders of all time.
I can't say produced by my friend Neil Kernan because I think it's been maybe his best production job of the albums that I have.
Yeah, it does sound spectacular. That's a good choice. Good choice. All right, 1992. I love this band, and again, this was one of those bands that when I started to get into and figure out that there was a new prog rock movement in the early 90s, this was the poster child, I think, for this movement. And kind of like Spiral Architect, I mean, they kind of came out with 2 quick albums and then just like disappeared till like 20 years later. Angloguard Hybris. Fantastic album. 4 tracks. Well, you get a bonus track on the reissue, but 4 long tracks, odd little Swedish vocals here and there, but for the most part, just this like mix of like flutes and Steve Howe guitar and Rickenbacker bass and loads of mellotron, loads of Hammond organ and synths, and just this intricate, like it's like Camel meets early Genesis meets Jethro Tull meets Gentle Giant meets Yes,
King Crimson.
King Crimson, absolutely.
King Crimson.
A little bit of the Canterbury whimsicalness, just an astounding album. Their second album, Epitaph, is equally as astounding. Just amazing how great this band is. And thankfully we got a third album from them, like in when was that? 2009, 10, something like that. And we're still waiting for album number 4. But in the meantime, we got that great All Traps on Earth album, which is fantastic, from the bass player. But man, Angloguard Hybris, one of the great prog debuts ever. So check it out if you haven't. Back to Anthony.
All right, number 3 comes from a guitar player who was in an established band and broke out on his own, and kind of Canterbury-esque style. Steve Hillage, Fish Rising, Dave Stewart on synths. They played together in the great band Con on the One and Done record, but this is just. A lot of people maybe consider this his solo masterpiece. It has 6 tracks. The opener is a 14-minute kind of like psych, atmospheric, track called Solar Music Suite. And the last track, Afterglid, is another 14 or 15 minute, just kind of atmospheric, kind of little doomy. Just his guitar playing is just so hypnotic and so spacey, and he's got, really, I love his vocals. His vocals go well with the songs. So I'm going with 1975, Frisch Rising, Steve Hillage.
Great choice. Great album.
Mm-hmm.
And that follow-up ain't too bad either.
Oh yeah. I love that follow-up, man. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Good choice. Good choice. I was hoping someone would mention
it. well, my number 3 is from a recently departed Chick Corea. It's the first album that he did under the Return to Forever guys, the eponymously named Return to Forever, with Airto on drums, Stanley Clarke on bass, the late Joe Farrell on flute and saxophone, and the tenor saxophone, and then Airto's wife was on there, Flor Purim. This is nothing like the Return to Forever with Al Di Meola and Lenny Clarke. This is a bit more streamlined and jazz. It's a great album. Some people can't take Flor Purim's singing on here at times, but it can be kind of embarrassing. But it's still one of their better albums. Very well done. The title track, Crystal Silence, is a beautiful song, and the 23-minute suite, Some Time Ago in La Fiesta, brilliant album.
musically, that is an amazing album. Yeah, those vocals though, I never.
Oh gosh, man!
White Chick did that.
Oh gosh! Well, although she did very well on what game shall we play today? But oh gosh.
What do you got, George? What do you got?
My number 3 is an album I talked about on the instrumental albums show, but I thought it was worth bringing up again. Neural Code.
Mm-hmm.
From Brazil, power trio, led by Angra / Megadeth guitarist Kiko Loureiro. It's a fusion power trio with obvious Brazilian flavors. I had said on that show that you probably can't get it, but then I end up looking, and Wayside still has it. So,
okay.
That wants a really fun CD. This is great.
Everybody get on the horn with Steve and order up a copy of that.
That's it. Mm-hmm.
All right. This one has got to be on my list. Great debut. Started a string of albums from them that continued on throughout the 70s. I don't think they have a weak one throughout the whole decade, and even they started off the decade pretty damn good too. From 1974, major label, Kansas, self-titled. I mean, this album is just absolutely incredible, and even though most people look at this decade and they think of Leftoverture and Point of No Return and Song for America, I still think that the debut is just as solid, just as great as all those. Can I Tell You is amazing. You got Journey from Mario Braun, you got Balexis on here. Apricot, Death of Mother Nature Suite is so heavy. Lonely Wind is gorgeous. You got Bringing It Back is more of kind of like a hard rock boogie tune. You got The Pilgrimage. Awesome album, awesome band. I just love this band so much, and had to be on my list.
My favorite Kansas album. Love it.
Really, the first one. Wow, cool.
It's my favorite album by them.
Great, great.
And I love everything else after that too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just a really solid discography from them. So, all right, Anthony, number 2.
Before I say that, I just want to say Journey from Mariah Braun is just total epicness. I mean, that is so good.
What a killer track, man.
My number 2 is kind of in one of my top 10 albums of all time. David Gilmour, self-titled, with future bass player from Foreigner, Rick Wills, on bass. What can I say? Gorgeous cover. The songs kind of represent kind of like a wintry kind of quiet feel. There's a track that he and Roy Harper wrote together, short and sweet. Two fantastic instrumentals. Raise My Rent is just absolutely gorgeous. The track that I think had some FM play, There's No Way Out of Here, was actually a tune written by a band that David Gilmour produced in the early 70s. So he put that on this record, but just absolutely gorgeous guitar playing. The Mel Halis and Raise My Rent are just two gorgeous instrumentals. The album, 10 tracks, fantastic. There's not much more I can say about Gilmour's guitar playing. That tone is just absolutely beautiful. So he's my number 2. It's from 1978 while Roger Waters was working on The Wall and Pros and Cons. He asked David, what should I pick? And he says, oh, I can work with The Wall.
There you go. Good choice.
Love it.
Great album.
All right, well, my number 2 is from 1974, going on the similar art rock theme. Bill Nelson's Bebop Deluxe, Axe Victim. What's that? As I keep saying, I hate to keep harking on Bill Nelson, but this guy, if anybody, my thing is that if you ever listen to Axe Victim or anything from Bebop Deluxe, it's like having Steve Howe jam with Roxy Music. An amazing guitar player. His stuff from earlier on was very David Bowie-ish. I know that he tried to distance himself from that as he went on with the band, but you talk about some hard rocking stuff. The song on here that everyone tends to venture towards is The Adventures in a Yorkshire Landscape. What's a live? Oh, thank goodness! They're coming out with the live album, an extended version of that. But
16 discs or something like that.
Oh man, yeah. I'm gonna get the 3 discs.
Holy moly!
I know there are people lining up for that big, huge thing.
Oh gosh, oh man, that's just too much, man. I would love it, but nah, I think my wife would kill me. But no, he's just an amazing guitarist, man. Great singer. The band behind him is not the same band that he actually had going forward from the second album onward. They only did 5 albums, but this is their debut album, Axe Victim from Bebop Deluxe. It came out in June of 1974.
Terrific choice, terrific album, and man, what a lead guitar player.
Oh, just killer, man.
One of the most underrated guys ever.
Ever.
Great choice. Yeah, I was like, when we were talking before, when you mentioned Roxy Music, I'm like, shit, Bebop Deluxe. I put it on my sheet here, and thank you. All right. I'm amazed nobody's talked about this one yet, but I'm gonna. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, the debut.
Love it.
Yeah, great album. Really, really great album. Everybody always talks about Brain Salad Surgery and Tarkus, but I think that this one doesn't get the credit it deserves. It is an absolutely amazing debut. Knife Edge, Take a Pebble, The Barbarian, Three Fates, Tank, and then you got the big, single, Lucky Man, right? Just incredible. Super, at the time, probably before UK, this was the original Prague supergroup, right? And totally lived up to the billing, and they released a string of really strong albums throughout the decade and became one of the biggest bands on the planet there for a while, man. Playing stadiums and all that kind of stuff. Sold a lot of records. First probably 4 or 5 albums are still the best, but yeah, love that debut. Awesome stuff.
You went out of order.
Yes.
Did I skip each? I'm sorry. I was so excited to talk about ELP. I totally went straight over George. Rewind. George, go ahead. What is your number 2?
My number 2 is from England, also put out by his friend of the channel, Ken Golden. Haken.
Yes.
Various. This is a band that definitely benefited from the demo process. They had a couple of demos before this, and you can tell that they took the time to really refine their songs and their song craft. Didn't repeat any of the songs from the demo on this, but the time working on songs and recording, it's invaluable. This album's pretty near to perfect, I would say. Working within the Dream Theater parameters, but yet sounding nothing like them.
Oh, nothing like them.
No, totally not. To me, they're a better band than Dream Theater has been in the last 10 years. So you like that style, but something fresher, taken.
Yeah, and that I don't think that album is as heavy maybe as some of their latter albums, which
Kind of like
people
early
think.
Riverside. Kind of
Yeah.
like early Riverside.
Yeah, but a little more crunch and a little more
Mhm.
like a lot more solos, I think. But,
Yeah.
yeah, such a talented band. Such a
Mhm.
talented band. All right, I will shut up now. We'll go to Anthony. So sorry about that, George.
All right, my number one comes from another established musician from the Fab Five of the prog genre. We're going with Voyage of the Acolyte, 1975. Peter had just left after the Lamb tour. Genesis was kind of like in limbo. So Steve says, you know what? I'm gonna go write some songs and produce an album. Phil Collins guests on one album as a vocalist. Sally Oldfield guests as opera singer on the Shadow of Hierophant, which is the epic tune, which was a tune written or actually comes from the Genesis Foxtrot sessions. The first track, Ace of Wands, kind of like blends jazz, prog, a little funk in there. I mean, this is like my number 4 all-time favorite record. It's just there's 1975 is my favorite year in music. This is one of the reasons why. This album is gorgeous. It's sublime. Steve Hackett's my all-time favorite guitar player, and this album is just absolutely beautiful and heavenly to me. So I'm going with 1975, Steve Hackett, Voyage of the Acolyte.
You know what's amazing is that he offered a lot of that material to the band. They were like, nah, it doesn't really fit into what Genesis does. And then you listen to that album, it's like this is like the long lost Genesis album. What are you guys talking about?
Pretty much, yeah.
Never understood that for years.
You know, the thing is, I don't think they ever took him serious as a musician. You know, you got to tell how great of a guitarist he was, and he also was a great songwriter as well. You know, but Genesis didn't feel that his material was good enough for the band, and they're lost.
I think one of the biggest surprises for me was, always saying, like on those albums, Genesis albums he appeared on, it's like, when you heard him, he sounded great, but he did just enough, right, to kind of blend in with everybody else. And then you heard him on these solo albums, you're like, this cat is amazing. It's like, and you have to wonder, like, did they kind of keep him in check, or did his skills just all of a sudden blossom after he left the band? I think he could always play that way. The music, Genesis songs only allowed him to come out of his shell that little bit occasionally, right? Because you think of like the great solos that he did in Genesis, right? There's usually a couple songs, Fourth to Fifth, obviously, and a handful of others, but all those the gorgeous classical and acoustic guitar things. I mean, he just could do some blazing stuff, and they really never let that side of him come out in Genesis, I don't think.
That's that's one of the reasons why Wind and Wuthering, an album that I love so much, but
that was the one album where you really heard him, right?
I was gonna say, you got to hear how brilliant of a guitarist he was overall. But once again, Genesis just didn't want him to shine as much. I don't know if this was a jealousy thing or just, they just didn't think of him as a major member in the band.
I guess.
And they still think of it.
Now, there was a period during the Selling England by the Pound sessions where Steve had thought about leaving, but Mike and Phil were like, no, please stay. And it's kind of like, and I know he tells a story about when he was leaving, when they were mixing the seconds out. And he said that if he would have run into Phil would have convinced him to stay. And that's why he just kind of said, hey, and took off.
Yeah.
But if you listen to those Steve, like literally the first 4 Steve Hackett solo records, you can understand where Genesis kind of got their sound. It kind of has a Genesis sound to it, a Genesis feel to it.
Yep. Yeah.
And that iconic solo, Fourth and Fifth. Good Lord. I mean, it's just
Ripples.
Oh, and Entangled with the track he wrote with Tony Banks. Just think of what more tunes they could have written, just those two together. So haunting and beautiful.
Yeah. What could have been?
Anyway, well, my number 1 is from one of my favorite musicians of all time. He's in my top 5. Someone that I love very dearly that passed away as soon as I was getting into him. It's the debut album of the great Frank Zappa from 1966, Freak Out. You know, you think about 1966, you know, when this album came out, people were like, wow, you know, even members of the Beatles were like, whoa, you know, this is not like nothing that we've ever heard before. You know, that second side, man, Help I'm a Rock, It Can't Happen Here, and The Return of the Son of Monster Magnet. Those 4 songs right there basically was the precursor to the krautrock scene. I know your favorite Can, but you know, but you got to hear just how amazing this guy was, man. You know, I can't say any more words about Uncle Frank, man. That's my #1 album right there. Frank Zappa's Freak Out, 1966.
There are plenty
Probably the best 20th century composer.
Oh,
Not even
whatever.
close.
yeah, without a doubt. And a lot of people claim that is the first ever progressive rock album. Because at the time there was no prog, right?
No,
this weird psychedelic music that incorporates all this stuff, right? And I think, you know, your statement that it's like almost like in a weird way, one of the first ever krautrock albums, not that far off the mark. Yeah, just a weird, wacky, just ahead of its time album and band. And yeah, I mean, Zappa, just one of the greats. One of the greats. All right, George, you're #1.
My #1's quite likely a disciple of that school. 1991, another band that definitely benefited from the demo process.
Mr. Bungle, yes, love him.
This album blew me away when it came out. I mean, I was a Faith No More fan, and I'll listen to anything Patton's on if he's singing melodically and not just screeching. And to me, this is his best performance. The melodies are incredible over this madness. He ties it all together and makes it listenable for a lot of people. A lot of people, it's noise. I get it. But for me, I love it.
Love that album.
George and I had a whole discussion on instant message a couple months ago about that album. And he's like, I can't believe you don't love that album. I'm like, man, I tried, but I'll try again. And I played it again and I was like, yeah. It's total madness for me. Like, this does not compute. I love Mike Patton, and I the Facebook stuff. It's like, I don't know, man. The Mr. Bungle stuff just never really did it for me. But people love that album.
Carousel.
Yeah.
Oh, can't love everything, right?
That's so catchy, Carousel.
It really is, man. If you're a fan of Fishbone, you would love that song.
So for me, one of the greatest debuts of all time, any genre, this automatically comes to mind. And this is an album I've always loved, but I think, you know how, and I say this all the time, you guys have heard me say it before. So, you know, as you get older, sometimes you appreciate certain albums even more. And I never thought it would be possible for me to fall in love with an album even more than I've always loved it, because I always have. But to me, this is just absolute perfection. It's savage at times, it's gorgeous at times, it's heart-wrenching at others, it's creepy, it's just all that and more in the courts of the Crimson King by King Crimson. Yeah, I just, and it's one of those albums that never gets old. From the chaotic beginning of 21st Century Schizoid Man to the lush I Talk to the Wind to the absolutely heart-wrenching, poignant epitaph with all of those mellotrons, right? To the, speaking of mellotron, Moonchild, right? And then of course more mellotron, more just emotional, just heart-wrenching brilliance. The Court of the Crimson King, the title track. I just absolutely adore this album. And you know, I've always loved King Crimson. I used to say for years that like Red and Lark's Tongues and Aspic and, you know, maybe Discipline were my favorites. I always loved this album, but this has just become like the go-to King Crimson album for me, even though I still love all the other ones. Man, the debut was so far ahead of its time. Just amazing.
Think about two great albums were released on that day. That album and Frank Zappa's Hot Rats on October 10th, 1969. Yep. Oh man, just two amazing albums.
Well, you know, 1969, pretty damn good year for music, right? That started
it sure was
3 years that were like probably unmatched in the history of rock and roll, in my opinion. But yeah. So we talked about some really good stuff here. Anybody, do you want to do a couple honorable mentions, everybody? You think you got some? Go for it.
Two of the albums that I had on my list, one was Kansas and the other one was The Inner Mounting Flame. But an album that wasn't mentioned by anyone was Saga. Saga's debut album. Mm-hmm.
They were on my longer list. That's a great album.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good one. Good one.
I had Mirath Hope. It's a great album. The first Dream Theater, everybody harshes on it because the production and the vocalist are considered subpar, but that doesn't beat down the songs. The songs are great.
The songs are very well done. Mm-hmm.
The debut from Uncle Mo's Space Ranch, that's another oddity from the Tone Center label.
Good one.
The first Cab and John Lane, Powers of 10. Another great debut.
Yep. Good choices. Anthony, you got any?
I had Kansas, the self-titled. I also had Mahavishnu's Inner Mounting Flame, and another one, Porcupine Trees on a Sunday of Life from 1991, which was like a space rock classic. Ken Golden was this close to signing that band, he told me.
Wow, really? Okay.
What could have been? He has the demos, he told me. Then he tried to sell them to me.
Got him. I'll give you a good price for him. Always a businessman, Mr. Gold. I remember I actually heard that debut after I had heard a couple of their other albums. And I remember listening to that. I'm like, what? Wow, this is different. That first.
Totally different. Mm-hmm.
Well, that especially the track Jupiter Island, it's almost like that could have been on a Sid Barrett record.
It's just that
psyche.
It's like it came out of
60s pop type.
1967, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have a couple. Of course, I picked UK as well, but and I picked Voyage of the Acolyte was also on my longer list. But I'm surprised George didn't go for The Warning by Queensryche.
Oh man, I almost picked that. I almost picked that.
This was originally in my top 10 and I was like, oh man, this was hard, right? I wanted to give some love to a couple of Italian albums. The first Banco del Mutuo Soccorso from 1972. And how about from, the same year, Premiata Fornerio Marconi, Storia del Minuto, in other words known as PFM. Wanted to mention that. The first Atomic Rooster, 1972, featuring Mr. Carl Palmer on drums, and that's all I got. Oh, and the first Star Castle.
Yes,
that's good.
Star Castle self-titled. A lot of good ones. Tons more than we probably forgot. I had this enormous list. I'm like, Jesus, I gotta stop because this will get out of control. And then I'll pull my hair out. Which ones do I pick? So there you have it, everybody. Some fantastic debut records from all of us, prog and fusion and prog metal. We will put the list in the comments section, so we'll get those up there momentarily. or they'll be, if you're watching this a little later, they'll be up there already. If you think we missed some really cool ones, like Hatfield in the North, that debut, I just remember that one. That's first Egg album too. It's really good Canterbury ones that
that first Egg album was really good.
Yeah,
Caravan's first album.
Yeah, that was another one I considered. Yeah, it's just that matching mold, the first one. God, we could sit here for another hour just talk about all the ones we didn't get to, right?
Chris Squire.
John Anderson, Elias. I can't believe you didn't pick that. I can't believe you didn't pick that one. I was like, I know he's going to pick that one. Anthony's got that. Can't remember all. But remember we talked about early on how some of the big bands, maybe their debuts weren't so amazing. Like I had originally the Gentle Giant self-titled on my list.
Which is a very good album.
I wouldn't say it's top 10 worthy. The first Yes album, good, not top 10 worthy. The first Genesis album, Genesis the Revelation, not at all. There's others. The first Rush album is great for what it is. It's not a prog album, so I didn't want to pick that one. So it's amazing how some of the more notable bands just maybe didn't knock it out of the park. Moody Blues, their first album.
Jethro Tull's first album.
Jethro Tull's the other part. It's a blues album, right? And not necessarily a great. It's good.
Jethro Tull didn't hit their stride till Benefit.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, but I think stand up is really good as well. That the seeds for a lot of what came afterwards. But yeah.
And I think Yes's sophomore effort is phenomenal, absolutely
Love it.
phenomenal.
It's in my
Higher
top
Word
five.
is just Astral Traveler. Oh,
Yeah, they were finally starting to hit their stride. And then the third album, of course, knocked it out.
well, yeah, that sent them to the stratosphere.
Yeah. And Genesis, that first album is just like this weird psychedelic pop, and then all of a sudden, Trespass was like, all right, now we're kind of getting there, and then there's boom, So, yep. There you have it, everybody. So, in the comments below, list some of your favorite prog fusion, prog metal debuts of all time. And we'll be checking those out and responding. And for those of you who joined us in the chat, thanks for joining. Appreciate all the input. And visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube
all the damn
time.
I want to thank Anthony, Chuck, and George once again for doing the homework and joining us on this fun show. We'll see this crew in 2 weeks for another fun-filled episode. We've got the B team coming up next week. So each and every week we got fun stuff for you on In the Prog Seat. So for everybody here, I am Pete. Thanks for watching. See you all real soon. Take care.